For today's Wednesday update video, we're doing a few very important Searchlight updates. Both of them pretty troubling in terms of what they're pointing towards, but let's go ahead and jump into this. Getting started with the case of Andrew Gosden, a case that we covered way back in 2017. Andrew actually had already been missing for about 10 years at that point. Missing from Doncaster, South Yorkshire, England. Let's go ahead and get the latest updates on this. You might remember he's a young man who pulled some money out of an account, and when he was supposed to be going to school, went on a trip of some kind. And we have footage right here from a train station, CCTV footage of him walking out of the train station. Of course, this raises questions. Where was he going? Why did he pull? I think he pulled 200 pounds, if I remember correctly. What was the intent of that? What was he going to do with that money? And one of the fears in seeing a situation like this is there possibly some level of grooming that had been going on? Was someone reaching out to him online and had enticed him to come and meet with them or something along those lines? Unfortunately, with the latest developments, that possibility gains a little more traction. Starting here at bbc.com, Andrew Gosden from Doncaster was last seen on the 14th of September 2007 at the age of 14. Now, two men, ages 38 and 45, were arrested on suspicion of kidnap and human trafficking in London. Both have since been released under investigation. Now, those aren't the only charges. The older man, the 45-year-old, also arrested on suspicion of possessing indecent images of children. We were already in very scary territory when we're talking about a case of this age, but just this leg of the investigation turning in this direction, I'm sure is terrifying for the family to think about. I know as soon as several of you were reaching out to me, hey, John, have you seen this update? It just goes to a very dark place to think of what Andrew might have been facing if we are talking about a trafficking situation here. Both men were arrested on the 8th of December. They've since been released, but the investigation isn't done yet. We'll touch on that in a moment. It's believed that these are the first arrests to actually happen in the case. So let's go ahead and see what else is happening around this over at thestar.co.uk. Police have seized a number of devices from the two men and expect that analysis of those devices is going to take between 6 and 12 months. And of course, with that charge that we talked about of indecent images, if they do find any of that, I'm pretty sure that the older of the two men is going to get rearrested fairly quickly. Of course, there's a possibility. I mean, do they find pictures of Andrew in all this? It's terrible. And of course, his family already making some comments, asking for privacy, but putting some comments out there to the public so that we kind of understand what they're going through at this time. Andrew's dad, Kevin, said he had been unable to sleep after receiving the latest news. I just couldn't sleep all night. We just don't know what to think about the latest development. He said he felt like he had when Andrew first went missing, when that latest development was announced. And what we're hearing from them, we'll actually look at a tweet that they sent out through the official Twitter account. But let's continue here. Senior Investigating Officer, Detective Inspector Andy Knowles said that the police priority at this time is supporting Andrew's family while they work through this new line of inquiry in the investigation. So this is the tweet that I mentioned from the @Andrew_Gosden account on Twitter. Please follow it if you don't already. I've been following it for years. A message for all of you from Andrew's dad. Firstly, please accept our apologies for not responding more individually, but we are overwhelmed with messages at the moment. DI Andy Knowles made us aware of the arrests made in London on December 8th, 2021, but we have not shared this because we have no factual information in addition to the police statement and would not wish to prejudice the investigations being carried out in any way. Essentially, they're saying all that they know about this is what we're seeing in the newspaper. They don't have any additional information. We understand that police investigations will take several months to complete, so until that is the case, we do not know what to think and do not wish to speculate on any possible outcome. We cannot add to the information in the public domain, but would like to thank the media, general public, and the charity Missing People for their support at this time and over the past years of our search for answers about what happened to Andrew. We have carried the burden of not knowing for many years, and recent potential developments represent a more intensified period of this emotional journey for us. I just want to really let that sink in. It's terrifying to think of one of the fears that you had that maybe wasn't so big. Now we're starting to see indicators that that fear might be worth considering more. I can't imagine what they're going through. So we hope you understand how difficult this time is for us as a family and wish to thank you for your support and prayers. And please do send both their way. Kevin, signed January 11th, 2022. Here's a photo of Kevin from another tweet at the Missing Andrew Gosden page. Of course, all the contact information he's talking about, we're going to have in the description box down below. Also down there, a link to their website. Help us to find andrew.weebly.com. Just in case you can't remember that website name, jump down into the description box down below. Click it now, bookmark it. They're doing a very good job of keeping this page up to date with latest developments and thoughts from the family. This gray box here, click here for an important message, is essentially the same statement that I just read to you that was posted on the Twitter account as well. When Andrew went missing, he was 5'3" tall, slim, with light brown hair, with brown eyes on which he wore strong prescription glasses. He would now be 28 years old, but his family have said he could be easily identified by an unusual double ridge on his right ear. So let's keep all eyes, ears, and hearts open and looking for Andrew. Our next update is on the case of Jason Landry, a case that I can't help but feel close to after speaking to his father. If you saw the previous episodes, we kind of did our traditional Searchlight. Then his father, Kent, got in touch with us. I hooped in Ed Dentzel from the Unfound podcast. We worked together to present more information that Kent was giving us directly. Kent has been in touch. I've been in touch with Kent over this past year several times. I spoke to him last just a few weeks ago. Some developments have happened around this in terms of information coming out from the authorities. And initially, I was confused and maybe a little angry about the information because I'm not sure what value it's serving or what purpose it's there for. It's kind of a weird spot for me to be in because in many cases I look for law enforcement and hope that they would release more information. And in this case, they're kind of doing what I'm asking for. The problem I'm having with it is kind of the analysis of the information that's coming with it. And that's what I'm questioning. Why is this helpful? If you're going to release the information, put the files out there. Let the news reporters comment on it. Let the public analyze it for themselves, come to their own determinations. Not exactly what's happening with this information. So it's a weird thing because on one side, I'm thankful that they're doing something to once again help re-raise exposure to this case in a pretty significant way. I mean, when you release all the body cam footage from the scene of the accident, that's going to get attention. When you release the 911 call from the first person to come across the car, of course, that's going to get some media play as well. And those things are happening. But there's just this question. I think you guys will get a sense of it once we start talking about the details here just a little bit. Over at fox7austin.com, officials have now released never before seen video and police audio as the search continues for Landry. Captain Jeff Ferry of the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office has spent countless hours analyzing footage, including body cam footage. There was footage also that Kent had taken of him arriving on the scene. And from the notes I'm seeing, I believe that footage has now kind of been released publicly. He shared it with us privately before, but that footage has now been released publicly as well. If you guys want to see it for yourself, of course, hit the links in the description box down below. Let's continue here.
The Jason Landry case is certainly a mystery, right? What happened to Jason Landry? Where is Jason Landry now? All signs point to us that he is under the influence. And we know that he's going to get in the car and try to navigate his way to Missouri City, where his parents are not expecting him. He was not due home. He was going to hang out with buddies, play video games, and get high.
The problem that I'm having with the information that's coming out in his analysis is he's looking at this like he's doing a DUI investigation, right? So one of the videos that they now have is there was a friend of Jason's that Jason had FaceTimed with. And the friend thought, oh my God, Jason's so messed up. I'm going to record this and show it back to him. And so I could say, hey, dude, look how messed up you were. So the police now have that footage. They have their analysis of it. They don't have audio from it. So they're relying on what the friend says in terms of what the conversation is. And we'll get to some of that here. But they're like talking about, oh, look how sweaty his armpits are. It's pretty clear he's under the influence. He's sitting inside. Why are his armpits that sweaty? He's been on FaceTime for 30 minutes. Why? I mean, I don't know. It's Texas. I mean, when I lived in California, I would be inside, and even with AC in certain places there, it could be extremely warm. Like, yes, your armpits do sweat. I don't think that's exactly a telltale sign that he's under the influence. Now, admittedly, we're combining that with his friend thinking that he's so messed up he's not going to remember what's going on. We've got this language from Captain Ferry saying that, hey, we know he's about to get in the car and he's going to try to drive his way. So I see that in two ways. Is it an important consideration? Sure. Were we already concerned about the fact that he might be under the influence of some kind? Yes, because we know that there was marijuana found on the scene. So does this change all that much for the public in terms of perception? The only way I see is not really helpful necessarily to the actual investigation. And guys, this is a thing that I deal with constantly when we're looking into cases. And I know that sometimes the family doesn't want to come out with all the details because they're worried that the public is going to decide not to help them, or maybe, the GoFundMe isn't going to be as successful, or the volunteer search efforts aren't going to be as successful. And there's a stark reality to that. There are a lot of people that are going to write off these cases because of personal feelings or biases they have regarding drug use, gender preference, employment. I mean, all kinds of different reasons, right? So I understand that. The problem I'm having is this additional information first isn't really backed up by anything solid. If you're saying, okay, he was doing psychedelics as well, okay, where's that container? Did you guys find that container in his backpack? Is the assumption that he left his vehicle, left his weed behind, left his clothes behind, but he just went off with his shrooms or whatever you guys think he was doing? There's just also just this, it just feels like judgmental, just watching the way that they're doing this analysis. And they keep talking about the fact that Jason's talking about spiritual enlightenment. And I just want to say, like, hold the phone for a second. We got a young man in college, might be smoking weed, might be experimenting with other drugs, talking about spiritual enlightenment. Like, is that completely unheard of? And I just want to echo the same feelings that Kent has been putting out there for a year. Kent was very honest right from the start. Hey, look, he's a college kid. Is he going to be experimenting, trying some stuff that he's not going to be talking to his parents about? Maybe. They were open to that from the start. So I don't know how routing this information, and it seems like the family is just as surprised about it when it comes out this way. I just don't know how it's helpful necessarily, outside of, yes, you got the media's attention. Yes, there's a new run of articles. These articles would have happened anyway without that analysis if you just would have released the raw materials, and then other people would have been able to come to their own determinations about that. Do I think anyone necessarily would look at that video and the first thing in their mind is, oh my God, that kid's all hopped up on drugs or something like that? Not from the clips I'm seeing. Like, and guys, I live in this type of, in these stories, these real occurrences on practically a day-to-day basis. And I'm very honest with you when I see stuff. When we were talking about the Bowman case, I was honest with you guys. Hey, I'm seeing some footage of this guy, and I feel like there's something else at play here. At least, and I haven't seen the whole video, but from what they're showing me, I can't look at that video and say, yeah, he's certainly high here. There's something, he's being out of character, because you've got these other things to compare it to, and it doesn't fit. They obviously have more information than I do, but it's a question. I've never been stuck in this spot before where I'm hoping that more information comes out that could be helpful to the case. More information comes out, And I don't feel like it's necessarily helpful. Do I think that it's going to ding the possibility? Like if Kent says, hey, we want to get some volunteer searchers together, do I think that this information being out there in this way is going to hurt those efforts? I kind of do. I don't know. I'm struggling with it, but let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. Let's get back to the information that they kind of analyzed and found here. Another big point where his parents are not expecting him. I've spoken to Kent, and the feeling I get about it is it wouldn't have been a big deal for Jason to show up without his parents knowing that he was coming that weekend. It's not that big of a deal. Is that completely unheard of? It kind of sounds like the way this analysis is coming out, that Captain Ferry's saying, oh, he wasn't going to go see his parents at all. He was going to go get high with his friends and play video games. Okay. How does that get volunteers to a field to search for this young man? Because that's the expectation that even Captain Ferry is putting out in this video. He's being extremely clear. We don't think that there is some criminal element to this. We think he's out there. And even the efforts that they're taking, I'm seeing, back in October, it was reported that they're using drone footage and they're analyzing the drone footage. Of course, the tools for doing that are looking for unnatural colors. We know that he removed all his clothing, so it's probably not going to be very successful. So what's it going to take? What are the actual things that are going to help this case? Probably going to be either legit searches with organizations like Texas EquiSearch, people that know what they're doing out there, or the next best thing, volunteer searches, people boots on ground, one step at a time, looking for any signs of Jason. And guys, I was very clear the last time I spoke to Ken a few weeks ago, I was clear with him about that as well. He was asking me about different possibilities and different things that he should be trying. And I was like, Ken, I would be so focused. If I was in your shoes, I would be absolutely 100% focused on more search efforts in that area. Because to Captain Ferry's point, there's nothing to indicate that he left the area. So even thinking about churning up the kind of news cycle on this, like, what are we hoping for? Are we hoping that there was another person that drove by that happened to see something? Who is the intended person? Like, if we were in a dream scenario, who's the person that could be watching this or even watching this right now that would get into the game on this case and actually help progress it forward? For me, it's people that live in the area that are willing to try to help when more volunteer efforts are mounted, or people willing to go to a GoFundMe to help raise money for more efforts, more search efforts, things of that nature. Ultimately, help us understand how it's helpful to the case. And I think that's just really where this segment and this interview with Captain Ferry seems to fall short. Now, please keep in mind, I know I work in this type of thing here as well. It's not his whole interview either, right? It's been edited for a news segment. And I can tell you guys, after being edited myself, some things are presented to be put out there looking specific ways. So there's that possibility as well. I don't want to say, hey, this guy's a big jerk, look at what he's doing here. Because I'm sure that interview, that could have been a 1 hour interview. We're seeing 3 or 4 minutes of it here. So I have to put it out there with I don't know. I'm just trying to understand it for myself, because there's an emotional component where I'm like, I was excited to see there were some developments. I'm like, all right, good. There's something going on with this case. What is it? And then I get into it and it's like, wait, we were already at a spot of thinking this young man was likely under the influence. Admittedly, most of us thought it would be marijuana, right? Now we're thinking, okay, he was under the influence, but it was a much harsher drug. And by the way, he shouldn't have been driving because he knew he was messed up. Like, that's what it feels like. There's this finger pointing, little bit of victim blaming aspect to it. And how is it helpful? I keep having to ask. Landry's internet activity in the minutes leading up to his disappearance are also discussed by Captain Ferry. Landry's Googling, how long can you live in the woods without food, or how long can you go in the wilderness? This stuff, extremely interesting and possibly helpful, but in the way that all it's doing is reaffirming what we've been thinking all along. We need more searches in that area. So like I see, if you're doing this analysis and now you're saying, hey, look, we have him literally Googling, how long can I live without food in the wilderness? And they're saying this is moments leading up to his disappearance. So he's like, either he's literally driving around doing this, or is it right after the crash and he's doing this kind of search? I don't know. That they say he's also looking up some spiritual enlightenment practices. He's looking up different strains of marijuana and different ways to combine those. Which once again, if we think that he's a harder drug user than marijuana, it's weird. I don't know where the assumption that there's other drugs at play necessarily comes from, but here's the next part. He's looking up different, and he's talking about psychedelics and how they have impacted his life and his perception of spiritual awakening. Hold on a second, because if you're saying it's his internet activity, is he making comments? Are you saying that he like went to Facebook and talked about psychedelics have impacted his life? That's not a search necessarily. That's a statement. So how would you know that? Like, unless, is he searching on something that obvious? Like, how have psychedelics, why do I feel like this on psychedelics, or something like that? It's, I don't know. There's a lot more detail that would help with us understanding something that ultimately I don't think is very important in terms of this missing persons investigation. Ferry says he doesn't believe anything nefarious happened to Landry. Okay. So what is all this? What does Kent think all this is? Let's run a few clips here.
If for any individual, myself included, you or anyone else, and the government felt it would appropriate to release our weirdest searches that we ever Googled in recent time, what would it look like for each of us? It would probably look pretty odd. So that would be my question is, why would you do that?
I mean, he's making an excellent point. I can tell you that when true crime creators get together, it's kind of like a little, it's weird to call it a joke, but it's something that we all certainly talk with each other about. Like, hey, imagine if someone came investigating me and pulled up my Google search history. Do you know what that looks like with the type of work that we do? And we all have an understanding of that. But even outside of that circle, I think he makes a great point. He goes further in this next piece over at KXAN.
As a former lawyer, I've never seen law enforcement assassinate the character of a victim. That's what Jason is, whether or not, he smoked pot.
So there you have it. Pretty plain in terms of how Kent's presenting it. And I have to tell you guys, we on the channel all the time, we see families that come out at law enforcement, usually a few months into a missing persons investigation, and start talking to the press and kind of talking bad about law enforcement. I haven't really seen that here. I think Kent has been extremely patient. I think he's been diligent in terms of his efforts, even in how he's laying out this, if you can call it critical commentary. I think he's being pretty straightforward about his feelings on this. He's still not slamming law enforcement necessarily. He's just pointing out some things that I think many of us would agree with and consider. Hey, if you're going to look in people's Google search, you're going to see some weird stuff. And why are we attacking Jason's character at this point? Back to my question, how does that help the investigation? Think about what you thought about this investigation before I started talking about it today and what you think about it now. What has changed? Young man went driving. We think he could have been under the influence. There was an accident. He left the vehicle for some reason. Search efforts need to be done in that area. Like it's just the same. So I don't know. Here at KXAN, they're saying this caught the family off guard. According to Jason's father, Kent, they weren't told anything was being released, so they didn't even know about this information being released. I don't know where some of that stuff came from. We haven't even seen some of those videos. So some of the stuff that was released wasn't stuff that the family was even aware of. They hadn't seen it before. Probably the body cam footage, I imagine, because from what I understand, the whole release includes, I think, over an hour of on-scene footage from the body cam Thankfully, it looks like there is some developments in terms of hopefully other resources that'll be brought in, maybe even a fresh set of eyes. The Caldwell County Sheriff's Office said it's expecting to meet with Attorney General Ken Paxton's office in the coming weeks to request assistance with the case. What are they going to be able to do? We're hopeful that the Attorney General's office newly formed Missing Persons Unit agrees to take this case on, said an email from the Sheriff's Office sent to the media. That might, like, one of the things I was considering when I was thinking about everything that I've seen that was put out in that video and all their analysis, was I got the feeling that they were kind of like not tired of the case, but they wanted to tell you about their conclusions and why they're not going to do much with it anymore. Like, that's kind of what it felt like. I think that's where Kent is feeling like, hey, there's this kind of victim blaming aspect. It almost feels like the sheriff's office is trying to make a justification to the public about, yeah, this is why this isn't on our top priority list, let's just say. And now we're hearing, hey, we're hopeful that this other office is essentially going to take this thing over. Just take it off our hands. And honestly, maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing. Here's a comment from Kent. We would just like a new set of eyes to look at what happened. I think so. And ultimately, I think we got to get more boots on ground, more volunteer services, more searches out there. So I don't know, guys. It's a bit of a weird one. I appreciate the attempt at raising the exposure. I think releasing the information in a case of this nature, like, it's probably not going to be super risky because I don't think there's some criminal element to it or anything like that. Or if there is, probably wouldn't necessarily be hurt by, oh, they're releasing body cam footage. They're releasing footage that Kent took the next morning when he was walking the scene. They're showing the ping trail of the cell phone. Like, that kind of stuff, I don't think would have any type of information that would lose them a court case if they wound up having to prosecute someone. So I appreciate the information coming out. The analysis that came with it, the tone that came with that analysis, how that affected the family, and hearing that ultimately it sounds like the sheriff's office is trying to wipe their hands of this. Little harder to appreciate that from where I'm sitting. But what do you guys think? Let's talk about it in the comments down below. As always, I'll keep you up to date on any developments with these cases. And I feel like I should probably reach out to Kent and just send him another virtual hug. Don't know what else to do at this point. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate that you care about these cases like I do. I'll be back on Friday with a brand new mystery for you right here on the Lord and Arch channel.